Hi, everyone. Dr. Elizabeth Rogers here. It's so nice to be connecting with you all, and I'm just waiting for my beautiful client and guest to join me. Her name is also Elizabeth, and I'm really honored today that she is willing to spend some time with me to talk with you all about some of the healing work that we've done together as we've been working together so closely one-on-one. So I'm really honored and excited. Elizabeth, are you here?
I am.
Elizabeth. So, everyone, so Elizabeth, I was just introducing the two of us. And as I mentioned, I'm Dr. Elizabeth Rogers, and I'm honored to be joined this morning by my beautiful and gracious client, Elizabeth, who has been kind enough to come and share some time with us and just talk with me about the healing work that we've done. So, as you all know or may not know, if you're watching this and you're not familiar with me and the kind of work I work with people to make not just an improvement for their health, but an everlasting health transformation. So my goal when you come and work with me, and Elizabeth and I will talk more about this, is that not only do I want to put the pieces of your health puzzle together and identify the root causes of why you're stuck in the place you're in, but I really want to facilitate healing for you across all layers and dimensions of health and well being. So, for me, it's about more than just identifying the physical root causes that might be standing in your way, such as toxins and pathogens. To me, it's about more than just identifying what foods should you eat or not eat, what supplements should you take, what tangible things can we implement to help guide you to target and eliminate those root causes that are creating and manifesting the symptoms that you're experiencing on the surface. But to me, what it's also about is identifying the less tangible, right? So there are non physical causes of illness, health issues, whether they're physical, mental, or emotional. My goal is to identify those and for us to figure out what modalities need to be implemented to remove those barriers from you, or is it other things that we need to talk about and create some strategies and healing around. So, Elizabeth, I just want you to take some time to share a little bit about you, about your journey, about our work together. And there's some specific stories that Elizabeth and I would love to share with you today about the work we've done, because I think that the less tangible work can be hard to understand unless you've experienced it. So, we want you to understand about some of the kinds of work we've done together and the kind of improvement that it's given Elizabeth on her own healing journey.
So, in addition to coming to you and wanting to get off my SSRIs, um, I just wanted to figure out a path to better well being. Turning 60, I came to you and I said, okay, I've checked the boxes. What else is there? Why do I feel so sad? Um, and so, um, we did the food work, and I learned so much from you about labels, reading labels, and just one of the most important things you said to me was, uh, we feed ourselves to nourish our bodies, not to satisfy our mouths. And so I try and remember that. And I think I'm eating less and less meat now just because I don't know if it's eating the plants that are making me not crave meat as much. But then on the emotional side, um, I guess you can talk about your medical intuitiveness
Sure.
and sort of
Sure.
what you saw when I gave you permission to take a look inside of me.
Absolutely. And so when I work with clients one on one very closely, like I work with Elizabeth, one of the things that I do is complete a medical intuitive session. So, to those of you who are not familiar with me or don't know me as well, I'm not just a classic doctor, epidemiologist, chronic illness expert, healthy aging expert. I am all of those things. However, I'm also an advanced medical intuitive, a Reiki practitioner, and really implement and integrate a lot of energetic and spiritual healing and modalities into my work. So I have a lot of training. And so what I really do, and I think what I envision is that I really am bridging the spiritual with the physical, the traditional with the holistic health. And so, one thing I do with all of my clients, like I was saying, is complete a medical intuitive session. Now, to me, why do I need to do this? Well, a couple of reasons. First and foremost, although my doctoral training has literally clinically trained me to identify the root causes of physical health issues, like we were talking about, there are not just physical root causes of illness. So, as a medical intuitive, I was trained to know and recognize that there are 6 different categories of root causes. And only one of those, believe it or not, is physical in nature. So, there are all these other layers and levels to our health and wellness that could be creating and manifesting symptoms on the surface physically, mentally, and emotionally. So, I complete a medical intuitive session for each of my private clients so that I can get additional insight into what may be going on. So I always first and foremost ask for permission. That's extremely important. So I did ask Elizabeth both verbal and what I call energetic or psychic permission. So the word psychic tends to come along with a little bit of a negative connotation, but I'm really here to represent that work with all the integrity and sincerity in the world. So I take that really seriously. Um, so it's up to me to identify what other categories of those 6 categories could be playing a role in what's going on with Elizabeth or my client that I'm reading for. So I'd asked Elizabeth verbal permission to complete a medical intuitive session. She did give me that permission. And I told her before I completed it, as will tell you and any of my clients, that what I'll be doing during that time, and we don't necessarily have to be together the way Elizabeth and I are now. So Elizabeth will attest to the fact that I actually completed her medical intuitive session remotely. We were not in a one-on-one session the way she and I are talking now. I can complete a reading that way, but instead what I did was complete her reading remotely. The reason I chose to do that was, first of all, so that I could honor our time together and use our time one-on-one in other ways with her, and also because it allowed me to collect even more information. So, in a 1 hour intuitive reading, Elizabeth and I may have come across one thing right away in her session, and we may have stopped right there and said, okay, we're going to address this thing that's come up. And we may not have gotten to all of the other things that did come through in our session, which we'll talk with you much more about today. So, what I do during that time, whether it's remote or with you in person, is not just ask you verbal permission, but I ask energetic permission because I do consider the type of work I do, specifically medical intuitive work, some of the most intimate type of work you can do with a person. And unless I am given permission both energetically and verbally from a person, I will not move forward. And I really honor everybody's confidence and confidentiality very deeply. But Elizabeth had given me permission on all levels. So, what I do then is connect with what I call my source energy. So, any of us who are genuine medical intuitives do have divine source guidance, and that source for each of us will be different. So, if you work with other medical intuitives who are genuine and trustworthy, you may notice that they work very differently, maybe completely differently than me. And there's certainly nothing wrong with that. In fact, I would expect that. I would expect it to be odd if you did work with someone else and found they were a cookie cutter of image of of my skills, because that is just really not the way intuitive gifts and skills tend to work. But in that scenario, what I'm doing is really entering your field, not just energetically, but I'm sensing in and around the body to determine areas that may be out of balance. I'm also sensing around the energetic field to determine if there are any blockages or issues there that may be interfering with you and your health. And so Elizabeth gave me permission for her intuitive session. I completed it, and I'll let her pick up from here. And I will tell you that in her remote session, the very first thing that I encountered was a very negative energetic presence in Elizabeth's energetic field. I was given information that this was a presence an energy that had been with Elizabeth since childhood that had been interfering with her in some to some degree indefinitely for as long as this thing had been around, contributing to some of the very symptoms, especially emotional symptoms, that she and I were really working to resolve. So when I identified this, I acknowledged it. And immediately when Elizabeth and I met the next time in session, I acknowledged to her that I had come across this presence and told her that I would like to, with confidence, guide her through a specific healing to release the energetic presence. And Elizabeth was fortunately very open to that. But she will tell you herself about a little bit about the experience, and that it was one of her first experiences, I think, with this type of work. Am I correct, Elizabeth?
Yes, I'd done, when the two children had died in the house that I moved into, initially when I had my children. So I did have some energy work done there, but nothing like what you did for me. Um, and so Dr. Rogers told me, Elizabeth, you have this sort of black negative energy around you. I can get rid of it for you, or you can, um, be with me and go through a healing session and ask some questions. And I decided that I wanted to understand why it was there, why me. Um, and so she led me into a meditation, and um, this entity was there, and she helped talk me through it and what to say to the entity and how to move it along. I did ask a question if it had really attached to me during this specific time in my life. The answer was yes. And then we went through the motions of um, telling this entity it was okay to move on. And I think, Dr. Rogers, you told me that uh, this entity showed you, like, look, I have her. And I was like in shackles, like, I've got her. Um, and so I literally was able to, through that meditation and that exercise, um, sort of exercise this darkness from myself. And then I told Dr. Rogers, like, the next 2 days, I was like, I felt better than I had felt since I could remember. And I called my sister and I said, I know you're going to think this is strange, but you're my sister. I got to tell you this. And she's like, do you remember when you were having work done? And it was maybe 15 years, 20 years prior, um, with this physical therapist, and something happened. You both saw something and you talked about it. And, it was this darkness. And then I remembered back to being with a woman um, who was a psychic, and sitting with her. And one day she said, you just have this dark cloud with you. And I'm like, okay, that's 3 different times that I have been told that I have this darkness. There's something attached to me in another realm. And sure enough, I mean, the healing was pretty tremendous. It was pretty transformative, right? It just it was like this darkness lifted from me. And maybe, yeah. So uh it was an amazing experience.
And Elizabeth, thank you for just, I know that everyone that ever watches this will feel the same way, but not just on behalf of myself and the work I do, because I do it because it's my purpose. And if I could help everybody in the way that I helped you, it would mean everything to me. So I want to thank you not just on behalf of myself and the work I do to serve others, but I want to thank you on behalf of everybody watching, because what I will say, and Elizabeth and I have talked about this many times, and Elizabeth, I'd love for you to share your thoughts, is that first of all, I think we all know that, what Elizabeth just shared, a lot of people will hear stories like that and it sounds out there, right? So when you think about, could things like that actually be impacting me and my health, whether it's physically, mentally, or emotionally, it might sound like, nah, like that's, I can't see it, hear it, feel it, smell it, touch it, taste it. So as human beings, for us, if it's not manifesting in a three-dimensional form, we find it very hard to wrap our human brains around believing it, right? But Elizabeth and I've talked about this so many times. Elizabeth, like, how would you, like you said, you got tremendous help from learning about what to do nutritionally for your health and wellness, what to do in the more tangible physical sense to put yourself on a path to lasting health and wellness. But if we would have just done that, how what would be the difference, do you think, in how you feel today? Would you mind sharing a little bit about
No,
that?
I think I think, like you say, I carried a darkness and a sadness, and we just finished some work that I'm happy to share too. But that um, there are things that are unexplainable, and perhaps with help from someone like Dr. Rogers, more explainable, that um, you don't know why you feel a certain way, or you have a sadness, or um, you feel that darkness. Like again, I've been on the SSRIs 26 years. We've gotten off of those. Um, but I've always been chasing the dragon, right? Always trying to tamp down whatever that sadness and emotional um, it's not it's emotional unwell-being, whatever
Yeah,
that word is. So yeah, I mean, I think that that's what makes me feel better and so appreciative, because what if I hadn't come across you, Dr. Rogers? What if I would still, I wouldn't have the relief. I wouldn't, I would struggle until my
even if
death.
you even if you had the list, right, of all the things to do nutritional wise, like I gave to you, you'd still be feeling
It's the
like that
emotional
sadness.
side, because definitely the supplements and like eating more healthy, and yeah, and putting the nutrients in and not the junk has, yes, I physically feel better. My stomach's flat every morning, all of these physical things that I'm always fighting for, right?
Yeah,
But I
right.
can do it in a healthier way now than
Yeah,
starving myself or eating something that's not good, and then, that whole circle. So, um, yeah, but there are different components, and there's the physical and there's the mental and the spiritual, that all go together hand in hand.
it really does. And like you just brought up, Elizabeth and I actually just completed another really powerful healing for her today. So if you don't mind continuing this story,
You
we can
know,
share, how I think for us too, Elizabeth and I have learned on our journey with her together is that, even when we identify those physical root causes, right? I really see that almost as like the gateway. Like we met, we put the pieces of your puzzle together. I said to you, here's what physically, pathogens and toxin wise, is going on in your body. But I feel like for you and for so many of my clients, it's like that's just the gateway, because once we knew that, then we created a plan at the physical, very physical, tangible level with supplements, with nutrition to start targeting those biological, very tangible causes. But that just allowed us to then turn our attention to the next layer, right? And then we went through the healing you just described. And then I feel like for you, what happened was it helped us reveal the next layer that needed to be
right,
healed. Because I'm sure, and Elizabeth can elaborate, um, we did this very powerful healing for her. And like she said, it allowed her to have the magnitude of the improvement she received was beyond anything she and I could have expected or imagined. And I will tell you all that I did not do any healing for Elizabeth. What I am is a facilitator, a conduit, and a channel. The healing work, Elizabeth did all of that. I just guided her. And she did all of this, everybody. And I just need to empower her because I didn't do a thing. I just guided her and walked along her side so that she had the support she needed to be able to do the work she did. And I watched her do all of this and shine brighter and brighter each time. But we went through that first healing and it was so powerful. And we both were elated, and I still am, and I always will be. But then time went on, right? And we continued to check in. We were having more sessions. Time was going on as she and I were working together. And what would you say? It was probably earlier this month, Elizabeth and I were talking in a session one on one. And she said, I said, how are things? Let's talk about, what's going on with your emotions, your mood, because we had that big release. And she said to me, I just feel like I still have this sadness that follows me. And I don't I feel like it's still more than just the average, rough day that we all have as human beings. So let me tell you all, I have them too. It's completely normal. Healing, unfortunately, looks like this. It doesn't look like a straight line, even once we get on a path like Elizabeth is on with me, that we know what to do and what and how to target it, right? There are still days in between there where it's not always the greatest. But Elizabeth and I at that point looked at each other, and I intuitively knew, and this is where, more of my medical intuitive expertise comes in. I knew instantly when Elizabeth told me this that there was something else there for us to do together at the more energetic, not physical level. So, Elizabeth, do you want to share a little bit more about how we decided that a few weeks ago and kind of
Yes,
how
I
things.
am. Yeah, I am. I think it's, I'm always teary, and I'm like, where's this coming from? And Dr. Rogers is like, Elizabeth, it is, it maybe you brought it in from a past life. And I'm like, maybe, I don't know, help me. And she's like, so let's do a past life regression and just see. I also told her that um, electricity and fire are I really have a fear of those things. And I have friends that tease me, you were burned in a prior life, because I am, I guess, so over the top about fire safety and all of those kinds of things. So I we did this session today, and Dr. Rogers helped me go back to figure out where the sadness came from. And I feel a little teary saying it, but at least I'm not in hysterics as I was earlier. Um, and going back, I discovered that I, saw myself in a field with a fire and, I don't know, buildings, and someone carrying out what I think to be a child. And I felt so sad. And so then Dr. Rogers helped me understand that, I was okay, that I needed to be together with myself and my soul in this prior life, and then to show me that this child is still with me, that this and then uh, my younger self or prior life self and this child and my current self, she helped us come together and um, lift out of this memory, lift out of this sadness, to understand that we're all together, that we're okay. And yeah, and I feel so much better. And she said that I literally looked so much better.
I still wish I had, not to interrupt you, but I have to just share that I wish, I wish that I had a before and after shot to show you, because I told Elizabeth right after that session, I said, I made her go look in the mirror because
You
she
did.
she looks like she literally lost at least 10 to 15 years in that session. I can't even express to you all in words how much lighter and colorful and energetic she looks and feels. It was incredible. And the kind of things that even though I do this work, I'll tell you all, I am in awe of it every time I do it. I never know what's going to happen. All I know is that it's my job to be the responsible, benevolent, honest guide and to guide my clients through whatever's about to happen. And the transformation I get to watch them make, it's all that, like I said before, again today, I did not do this healing for Elizabeth. Elizabeth did this healing. I guided her. I walked with her. I created the safe, sacred space for to facilitate where she felt safe to unpack all of that. But I watched her do the work
Mm.
and got to watch her get to take her power back. And that's, all I can hope for people. So thank you so much for sharing that, Elizabeth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If that sharing can help somebody else, that's what we can do, right? For others in the world is to share our experience so that they might feel some relief or find some way out.
I agree. And Elizabeth, would you say, is there anything else you'd like to share about, our experience? Did you feel like, would you have said, maybe for skeptics out there watching, would you have said before, if you could go back to before we were working together, and if I would have said to you in consultation, we might have to do, some energy healing work. And I did. I always tell my clients when they come to work with me, know that we will be doing some non-traditional types of work. Is that something you're open to? I want people to feel confident that I'm the right fit for them as, a guide, and a practitioner. But if I would have said to you that we would have done these healings and you would have been able to get, the magnificent improvement you've made, would you have believed it? Do you think? I don't know if I
No,
would have.
I don't know. No, I mean, it's, you have to experience it, right? To
Oh,
understand. Um, yeah, and I certainly felt bad enough, obviously, to seek out a doctor to help, and I thought it was nutritional, and it certainly was part of it, but
in
obviously
part,
not
right.
all of it. It was not all of it, and yeah, and so I am so thankful to you and your openness. And no, I would not have known. I would not have. Yes, there would be no way to have known how you could have helped me in that way. But I
It means the
appreciate that you said non-traditional, or that you look at both sides, because
yeah,
I do believe it's hand in hand. So I am a believer that emotional and physical go hand in hand. So I did have that foundation.
absolutely you did. You really did. And we had talked at length, before we ever decided to work together, whether, what your goals were, what exactly you'd been through, what hadn't worked for you up to this point. So we both had a deep understanding of, all the things Elizabeth had tried that we knew were not getting her where she wanted to go. And don't you think too, Elizabeth, it's just amazing when you can take a step back and realize that our health and wellness, really are so multidimensional and there really are so many layers to it. And like you said, I think I have to say this too, I was my own first client years ago. I tell Elizabeth and my clients all the time, it is a journey. It is a
It is a
journey. And
journey.
every time you get through one layer, the next will present and reveal itself. And it truly, truly never ends. And if I would have stayed in the belief system of my very traditional education, I'd still be standing over there on my pedestal saying, just eat these right nutrients and supplements. And if you're not doing it consistently and persistently, then that's why it's not working. But the truth is, like Elizabeth said, we made those changes for you, right? But there
Right.
was still something missing. And you'd still come to me and say, I do feel, and maybe you can share that, you did say to me, I feel the difference between when I follow the right nutrients and nutrition and I don't, but yet still, there was still something else there that we
Right.
just knew was never going to be
Just that
resolved, no matter
sadness. right.
Yes.
The
Yeah. And
sadness.
so for us, we knew there was something else going on that needed to be addressed in a different non-physical way.
Right. And I think
Yeah.
your discovery of that entity, and then now, like I said, looking back, like it had been pointed out to me before, it was just I wasn't paying attention. I didn't know what that meant or what to even do about it. It was just, it's only in hindsight that I can see that people were trying to tell me at different points in my life that
Mm,
there's something that's following you. There's some black entity or energy. And
yeah.
yeah. And so
And like,
I would say, I think again, we come to people, I guess it's part of the journey is coming to the right people, but yeah, finding you, how was that? That I found a doctor finally, and I've mentioned my age. You know, I've been to a lot of doctors in my lifetime, been through a lot of talk therapy, been through always, you know, a, a fairly decent eater, but not a healthy eater by any means, but a calorie counter type, but not thinking of the nutrition that I needed to be strong and, you know, not develop all these illnesses. And it was all in one place with one doctor who could pull it all together for that healing
well,
journey.
I love you deeply, Elizabeth, and it means the world
I
to
love you
me.
too.
Um, it means the world to me to be able to walk along your side and share this journey with you.
Yeah, I'm so
And the,
thankful.
the bright light I have watched you become in this short period of time is I really can't put it into words, but it means the world to me that you were willing to share your intimate story with people
Yes.
because it's very private and personal. So I just want to acknowledge that and say thank you for your willingness to share something that is very much a vulnerable story. And I'd just like to say too, and Elizabeth, I'm sure you'll agree, when you hear Elizabeth and I talk about like this entity, this thing, um, don't want people to be frightened and think, oh my gosh, what's potentially around hanging around me. It's different for everybody, so how do these things get formed? How do they get created? How do they find us? Let me share it, just like Elizabeth shared. It can happen in a lot of different ways. And where it can actually start, Elizabeth and I have spent a lot of time in our recent sessions talking about this, is with our own thoughts, right? Because our thoughts, just as much as we are physical beings, we are electrical, energetic beings. And that electricity and energy, it creates things in and of itself. So even just an accumulation of thinking really negatively can actually create a negative thought form that can, in and of itself, become this entity that will actually create a barrier for our health and wellness. So I don't want people to get scared and think like we're Elizabeth and I, seeing these scary things like you see in the movies. Not necessarily, right? But we picked up on it. We were able to discern why it was there, what to do about it, and then to help it move on because ultimately everything's energy, right? And it can't be created or destroyed. But what we can do, just like we're all people that came to planet Earth into this lifetime for some reason, but ultimately for the reason of learning and growing, so is any energy. And so, in my mind, what Elizabeth and I did was just help that energy progress for its own development because it wasn't serving her on her journey. In fact, it was impeding her on her journey. And so, it was our job to help it recognize that it wasn't progressing for its own development and to help it move on to do exactly that, to become a more beneficial energy, which wasn't one that was going to be impacting her ever again. You know, Elizabeth, thank you so, so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you
Thank
for
you. Is
all
there
of your
anything else you want to say?
healing.
I can't thank you enough today.
Yeah, no, I'm very thankful, and I yeah, I was led to you for a reason,
I
And
believe
I'm
that
I'm
with
thankful.
I'm thankful for you, and I believe that with everybody that comes to work with me. I do not believe in coincidences. So if you're somebody out there watching, what I want to say is this. I have all the love and patience in the world. Like Elizabeth, all of my clients come to me having had a long journey before they ever came to me. A lot of my clients have been very traumatized by mainstream doctors, by other situations that they've been through on their path to try to heal themselves. So I just want you to know that I invite you to be skeptical. I invite you to really strongly consider what you hear and to know that it's with all the love and patience in the world that I have this space for you. And I trust that when you feel it's your time, that you'll know and feel that calling to enter our safe, sacred healing space at my practice. But know that it's with all the love and integrity in the world that I do this work. And I'm grateful to Elizabeth for coming to help me share a story so that you can all see just how honest the work we do really is. And that it is sometimes an experience that you have to live it and see it to feel it and believe it yourself. So thank you
So
so
true.
much, Elizabeth.
All right.
I love you
Thank
so
you.
dearly.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers.